What's up, everybody? Harrison Van Riper here. I have a full house full of strategy
For
people,
once, for the first time.
full of strats.
What's up, everybody? It's Viktoria in the house.
Victoria is over from London, so we have me, HVR as usual, Alex Guirakhoo,
We're very excited to have everyone here in one place.
who has been a regular co-host slash guest slash, and we just call you a co-host at this point.
By now, yeah.
Contributor.
We're a try host at this point because we have Viktoria Austin in the office as well.
Yeah.
So it's a full house today.
So this should be the best podcast. episode
Literally
ever.
the best.
Yeah.
Literally the best. Although I haven't thought of a question of the week yet. So we'll see how it goes. How's everybody doing? What's the best thing that you've done this week so far?
Oh, I've had so many great things that's happened this week. I met Zuko, which I think is top of the list so far.
Listeners will remember that Zuko is Alex's pet.
We haven't actually talked
Shiba Inu.
pet, please.
Sorry. Child.
We actually haven't talked about him in a while, have we?
Yeah, when are we going to bring him on the show?
Whenever we allow dogs here.
Maybe we'll have to do a mobile podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And then last night we watched the Ducks versus the Stars. So that's ice hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I loved it.
Super exciting.
So
A
fun.
lot of rain.
Lots of rain. We all got drenched walking back to the train. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the Stars won.
Yeah, just.
Well, 2-1.
A win is a win.
It was
Yeah.
tight. It was tight.
So it's been lovely having you here. You're
Oh,
here
it's been
for
great.
until
I'm here, I think, until next Tuesday.
next Tuesday. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Perfect. And then this weekend we're doing barbecue.
Oh, my
Mhm.
God, yeah.
Rick.
We have got brisket, I
Yeah.
think. Just everything, Texan. I just want to eat everything that's Texan.
And we'll have good weather too, so no more rain.
Hopefully.
Yeah, actually, I was quite surprised. I was like, why have I brought the English weather
Yeah.
to Texas?
I mean, I'm kind of disappointed by that, but
I'm-
I won't hold it against
I'm
you.
sorry I brought it with me. But yeah, no, hopefully this weekend we'll have some nice weather, some great food, and just hang out with everyone in the Dallas office,
In great company.
Exactly. What more could you ask for?
What more could you ask for? I know what you could ask for. Some threat intelligence news.
Oh.
This is ShadowTalk, everybody. Let's start this week with talking about Avast.
So Avast said that it had encountered a cyber espionage attempt. So,
What does that mean?
yeah, well, I can tell you. They actually released a statement on their website in which they describe themselves as fighting off a cyber espionage attempt. So they described the cyber espionage actor, or I guess, campaign, as Abyss. Is that correct, Alex?
Abyss.
That's
yeah.
what they said, yeah.
That's what they said.
ABISS.
And what they experienced, I guess, here is that they had seen that this cyber espionage actor had attempted to kind of insert malware into their CC Cleaner utility. So what was interesting about this is also that it kind of mimicked a similar campaign or attack that happened back in 2017.
Pretty well known. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, very famously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess,
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was like they identified some kind of malicious behavior on an old kind of unused account for their VPN.
Yeah.
And they had been tracking it they saw the activity actually from May of this year, mid-May of this year. Then they kind of tracked it for a while. And then once they were like confident that this was a legit, like this is not somebody that works for Avast or anything like that, they decided to shut it down, shut down that temporary VPN profile, and then
They revoked the certificate.
revoked their
right?
certificates, and then they reissued them just in case, basically. And then they also re-rolled the user credentials.
Yeah.
So everybody had to reset their passwords, essentially. They also, which I thought was interesting, they halted upcoming CCleaner releases. So they say in their statement, on September 25th, we halted upcoming CCleaner releases and began checking prior CCleaner releases and verified that no malicious alterations had been made. So no altercations either. So it's interesting to see this kind of come back around, and they're like, okay, we're learning from our past, mess up.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a mess up on their front, but it was something that happened back in the day.
And they've learned from it,
they learned
right?
from it. They learned from it.
And
so
they took a more proactive approach this time.
Exactly.
They said, all right, we're going to make sure that we trace everything back and make sure that nothing is...
Yeah, nothing weird's going on.
Nothing's bad, nothing weird going on.
Yeah, exactly. So, the other thing was on that VPN profile, the temporary one, they didn't have 2FA enabled on it. So I think that was probably something that they've learned, that they will learn for the future, that maybe on all those VPN stuff that they'll have 2FA enabled, just to kind of weed out any of the other people.
I think another question to kind of consider here is whether, when they uncovered that when they had discovered this cyber espionage actor, was it by mistake? Was it on purpose? Like, were they purposely going through their systems looking for this actor? Like,
So from the statement, it makes it seem like they kind of first spotted the activity on October 1st from a Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics activity, basically. So they saw it within the logs, and then...
Well, they saw an alert that was initially... They thought it was a false positive, so they went back and looked at it again.
And they were like, oh.
Actually...
Yeah. And so then they kind of backtraced themselves. So then they went back to earlier in the year into May, and then that's when they started gathering everything together, being like, okay, this doesn't look right. And then on October 4th is when they saw it again pop up, and then that's when they confirmed it, and then they were like, okay, let's shut it down. So it's just kind of interesting, right? I mean, the threat actor, again, they don't know if it was the same threat actor from before. They don't know necessarily, they don't call out anybody in particular. They've just named the attempt Abyss, so whether that's going to become a new threat actor name or not, we'll see.
Into the abyss.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting, too, because they deliberately kind of let the threat actor continue on for a little bit just to track their activity and really understand what's going on, who are they targeting,
right?
And maybe they can understand why.
And that was around October 4th as well. Yeah, so it was interesting. I think, it brings up, again, the question of third-party risk.
Supply chain.
Obviously, Avast and CCleaner being under heavy scrutiny from the previous attack in 2017, all eyes on them just to see what's going on. So I think is actually a fairly good response from them just to be like, this is what happened. We took what we believe to be the proper steps to kind of mitigate against it. I think fairly straightforward, and that's all that people ask for in these situations.
Transparency, especially.
So it's interesting, but it brings up all those points again. So it's definitely something to think about for the future in terms of third-party risk and supply chain.
Yeah, and I guess from a kind of business angle, Avast acquired Piriform, the company that produces the product CCleaner, in July 2017. And then in September 2017, they experienced the first breach. And now they've had another breach. And it just goes to show, like, when these companies are acquiring products, like, do your due diligence. And I guess it was probably very difficult at the time when they were acquiring Piriform because a breach hadn't happened. But then it comes into their hands. It's now one of their company assets, and they have to take it under control. So, I just think that's I think interesting.
In terms of due diligence, I think, like, obviously the business side goes into all kinds of due diligence for return on investments and all that, which I could have completely used that term incorrectly in that sense, but because I know nothing about business. But do your due diligence on the IT as well. The IT systems that they have set up, the assets that they own, maybe if they have some shadow IT out there that they don't know about, like, that's all stuff that you should know about if you're the purchasing company, right? So, because you want to know exactly what you're inheriting. So,
yeah, exactly.
All the risks and vulnerabilities that come along with it.
Yeah, those background checks.
Okay, so moving on from Avast, let's talk about NordVPN. Alex, what is going on with NordVPN?
So this was something that... So almost similarly, NordVPN, which is a VPN provider, it's quite popular. They announced that they had So they announced that a data center that they had been using in Finland, they had made some changes that they weren't necessarily made aware of, and that resulted in the exposure of an internal private key for the VPN, which could, according to NordVPN, under very specific circumstances, allow someone to create...
It would allow people to create their own servers and impersonate
NordVPN, right?
Yeah.
Without the end user being aware
of it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Which conflicts with the company's general reputation as it kind of positions itself as a company that protects online privacy. So
yeah, and NordVPN came under, similar to what happened with Avast with CCleaner, they came under a lot of scrutiny for kind of the way that they handled this situation, because they received a lot of flack from the security community saying that they were downplaying what had actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some mentions of, because they do business within the EU, there's some mentions of GDPR and the implications of that. But if NordVPN says that actually, well, no, customer data was impacted, then it doesn't technically fall under the remit of GDPR, right? Mm-hmm. Because they were aware of this breach for quite some time now, for a good amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it says that they were notified about the breach in on April 13th.
Yeah, so it's over half a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then they destroyed the server.
But why did they come out about it now?
I'm not sure. I wonder if, did it get picked up by media? And then, like, maybe somebody heard about it, and then that's why they had to address it now. Maybe they didn't think that they would have to address it.
There were some logs I
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there were some logs that were leaked on Pastebin that showed kind of the effect of the intrusion.
Okay.
And that's why some security commentators were looking at that, and they were saying, like, hey, this is actually much worse than we're being told.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes more sense then. It's interesting because it's like you see somebody like Avast who has experienced a pretty significant, breach of their. I mean, they were literally sending out malicious updates through one of their softwares, and then you have somebody like NordVPN who is all about privacy and is all about protecting data. I mean, that's essentially their business model, and they have two completely different responses to a cyber event. It seems like the Avast stuff pretty well received, even though there was like some shenanigans going on with one of their temporary VPN profiles. It's like you look into the NordVPN stuff, and even though they say that there were no user credentials affected or anything like that, it's still pretty heavily scrutinized. Like you say, a bunch of security researchers were kind of coming down on them and talking about the bigger effects of what that breach actually looked like. So it's just, and I think part of it is the fact that in this day and age, it's kind of like, if you have a breach, if you have a cyber incident that could even remotely possibly affect customer data, you need to have a plan in place to respond to it publicly, because it's going to come out.
And so, I mean, with Avast as well, they did wait a little bit before disclosing it because they wanted to track what was going on. And with NordVPN, they did wait a little bit, but that was because they wanted to make sure that none of their other data centers were vulnerable to a similar type of incident. And when you have, almost 3,000 or over 3,000 different data centers and different nodes, right? That's going to take a lot of time. So,
but we're talking about months with the NordVPN stuff. The Avast stuff was days.
I mean, with the NordVPN thing, it initially happened. It initially happened in March of 2018.
Right. But they might not have necessarily known. Yeah, actually, they say that. They say in March of 2018, we were unaware of it at that time. Yeah. And then they don't really say. They say that they were notified about it in April of this year. So
they also said that they shredded the server the same day.
Yeah. So they completely destroyed it, which I mean is good. It's a good thing to do. Yeah. But like, would there have been as much pushback on this if they had released a statement on April 14th or a week later or something like that?
I mean, again, here comes the thing with transparency, right?
Yeah.
For public perception, people generally like it when companies let them know of things that are going on as soon as they happen, or as soon as they realistically can let the public know. Because there are cases like with Avast, right? If you let this information out, that compromises what you're able to actually do and find out about what's been going on.
Right. I think that Yeah, it's just the public perception of it, right? Obviously, there's going to be circumstances that you can't release information on things right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that will definitely happen. I'm not saying that every situation calls for an immediate transparency sort of action, but I think that it's important to, at least when this statement comes out, when it does come out, explain the reasons why it took so long. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a big question in people's minds as to why did you wait so long to respond to this?
Mm-hmm.
We saw a similar thing, not to equate this to Equifax, but we saw a similar response to Equifax where it was like, why did y'all wait so long to talk about this? And that's obviously a completely different situation. I don't want to equate it, apples to apples, but it's still an interesting sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's different also with what kind of cyber event we're looking at. With something like a data breach, a lot of times these things happen without anyone knowing, right?
Yeah.
Except for the attacker. And that's kind of the point of a successful data breach.
Right.
Whereas with things like ransomware events, it's a bit more in the...
Happens right away.
It happens right away. And that's what we saw with Norsk Hydro last year, right? As soon as it happened, the company was like, all right, we're on this. We're letting everyone know what we're doing, what happened to the best of our extent. And that was another example of how they handled it very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I guess the difference between ransomware and a breach is like a ransomware actually stifles business activity.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And a breach is like, oh, well, here in this case, we don't know if customer data was compromised. So
Right.
it doesn't affect everybody, but,
It could fly under-
approach it differently.
Right.
At least not immediately.
Right. It could fly under the radar a little bit more than a ransomware would.
Yeah, because if people can't log onto their VPN, then obviously there are people.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
I think something that I picked up from Twitter, and this kind of goes like when you're thinking about a breach or when a breach occurs in the business, it's like you've got to involve different teams, like cross-party collaboration or cross-team collaboration. And I think the same day the breach happened, there was a marketing campaign where an ad went out, and the ad said, "Ain't no hacker can steal your online life if you use a VPN."
Yes.
And
that's what we call irony.
yes, yes. But in response, NordVPN kind of admitted that marketing weren't really aware. Let me just find the statement.
Yeah, I'm sure they weren't read into the...
They actually said our marketing department got ahead of themselves and published an ad on Twitter that triggered the InfoSec community. So yeah, I just think as well when these things happen, you've all got to be on the same page internally. So
yeah, for sure. And I think that, and I don't know obviously the inner workings of NordVPN or anything like that, but this is the situation where you want to have a plan in place. You want to have those processes already worked out before something like this happens, before you have to answer to a breach response. And it's like, okay, I need to go talk to my head of marketing and see, are there any issues there? Okay, I need to go talk to legal. Like, you want to have those things kind of ironed out. You want to have not crisis management situations kind of under control, and documented so that everybody knows what they are. Okay, so NordVPN, that leads us into the a blog that got published this week from Dr. Richard Gold from Digital Shadows. Alex, why don't you talk about that one?
So Rich's goal...
Rich is gold.
Ooh.
So Rich's blog talks about Wi-Fi security, and it's a nice take on the wisdom that a lot of people, conventional wisdom that a lot of people know. It's, security awareness. They think, okay, always be wary of public Wi-Fi. Never go directly into public Wi-Fi without having any kind of protection on your devices. So something like a VPN. Right? So it leads in perfectly. And so his blog discusses the ways that Wi-Fi works in the modern world right now, in that it's not actually as insecure as people might be led to believe, and it is good practice to use additional safeguards, but you shouldn't use them just for the sake of using them, because like we saw with
NordVPN,
these two examples here with NordVPN, there are other issues that could put you in a worse off spot than if you were just going to use the Wi-Fi just blindly.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've seen that kind of has opened my eyes in terms of VPNs over the last 8 years or so are the fact that, like, VPNs literally track all of your information.
I mean, they have to.
I mean, you're funneling all of your traffic through them. So are you going to put your trust into a public Wi-Fi at Starbucks that somebody could be sitting on and could be tracking, all your traffic through. Like, it's certainly possible. I'm not discounting that fact at all. But a VPN company who is not legitimate, and you're just kind of trusting it because it's a quote-unquote VPN.
Especially when it's something that is a free VPN
Free
provider.
VPN or something like that might not be, legitimate. Like, they're gonna know what to do, what to track, what to, maybe sell your data to an ad service or something like that. Like ISPs do, right? That's one reason why some people try and use VPNs is to get away from ISP tracking. But if you don't use a legitimate VPN, they can just do the exact same thing. So I know that that's not necessarily what what Rich's blog is talking about, but that is something that in my mind when we're talking about VPNs and Wi-Fi's and stuff like that comes to my mind.
I don't know where the insecurity stems from. Like, everyone is quite paranoid about the whole public Wi-Fi situation. So
I think it's. I mean, I guess read the blog, right?
If you want to read the blog.
If you want to read the blog. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point that Rich brings up and that you've already mentioned is the fact that, like, it's probably not as insecure as people make it out to be. I think, obviously, there's a lot of hyperbole in media reporting and stuff like that. It just gets kind of, like, made to be worse than it actually is. So when Rich talks about things like TLS and implementing that and basically encrypting that traffic from the browser that you're already on to that website, it's like, okay, so the Wi-Fi, even though somebody else is on the Wi-Fi, they can't see that data. Now, if you're just using completely unencrypted stuff, which is fairly old school at this point, not using TLS, not using any sort of certs to kind of, authenticate yourself and encrypt your data, like, that's pretty old and might not be as common as people,
in a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
If you use a VPN, right, you might be led to believe that you're automatically safe.
Completely secure.
And you don't have to do anything else. So you don't have to follow any other security protocols. Just throw all that out the window. As long as you're using a VPN, you're fine.
Like that ad from NordVPN would suggest.
Yeah, or like the blog that they published in 2018.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's not a catch-all, right? Especially with the VPNs that you set up yourself or ones that maybe aren't as user-friendly. So those that require a bit more setting up configuration, right? You run the risk of having it not being configured correctly, and that can lead you to another path that might leave you more exposed than you would be if you're just using the Wi-Fi without a VPN. So they're not catch-all security blankets, right?
Well, yeah. Also on VPN, like if you're trying to use a public a public Wi-Fi spot, and you also have a VPN, it kind of introduces some issues with like captive portals that come up. And let's just use Starbucks for example. They, when you get onto their Wi-Fi, there's a captive portal on there that basically just says, okay, you need to click here before you can log in. You see that a lot at hotels as well. But if you have a VPN enabled, that can sort of get in the way of it, and it can kind of throw you into a weird loop. Like I've experienced that several times, especially if the captive portal is not set up correctly.
Yeah.
Or if the router is, not necessarily configured correctly. So that can throw an issue into it. And so like if you're in a spot where you have to have Wi-Fi, you have to have an internet connection, what are you supposed to do at that point, right? Like if you can't connect to your VPN and you have to have Wi-Fi, like there has to be some other workaround for it. And I think that comes back to your point of having your actual device configured correctly and securely.
It'll go a lot further.
Goes a lot further than just having a VPN. VPN is not the end-all be-all to everything, especially because it only encrypts, well, quote-unquote, only encrypts your traffic. It doesn't protect you from somebody stealing your laptop or plugging in a USB device into it and pwning you that way.
Or clicking on a malicious link.
Exactly, or clicking on a malicious link. Yeah, I mean, it's not the end-all be-all, and I think that marketing can sort of lead people to think that it is. Which we've seen VPN providers have their own issues. So it comes up quite a bit. If you want to go read the full intelligence summary, which I don't think that any of these topics were in the intelligence summary this week. So there's plenty of additional content within the intelligence summary this week. So please go download it. It's at resources.digitalshadows.com. Please remember to go rate us on iTunes. Vic is singing into her microphone right now. This leads us into the question of the week. Question of the week this week. Oh, does Vic have one?
Would you rather be able to sing or dance?
Would I rather be able to sing or dance? Oh.
Really, really well.
Like
man.
Beyonce style singing.
I think dance. I think dance probably.
Okay.
Because like I cannot dance.
But you can sing.
I can't sing either. But like I literally can't dance. So I feel like dancing. Ooh, this is gonna be controversial.
Oh.
I feel like dancing is more impressive than singing.
And dancing is a bit more expressive.
It's more visual.
Mm.
Yeah. Like Justin Timberlake, not a great singer, great dancer though.
Senorita.
Yeah.
I'd say singing. I mean, if you're looking at how you can build a career off either one of those, I'd say it's probably easier to build a career off being able to sing really, really, really well.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, but then you can look at Britney.
I don't know.
Just
who
get
that is.
people who can
Britney
sing
Spears?
over
Oh,
you.
Spears. Oh, okay.
What?
All the Britneys in the world.
Come on now. There's only one Britney. Let's be real.
Get some people to sing on your behalf, and then you do the dancing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little frowned upon.
What do you choose?
I think dancing.
Oh, we got two dancers and one singer.
Guys, you could make a band.
All right, you be the singer, we'll dance.
You'll be the backup dancers.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a Digital Shadows. Well, we always talk about having a Digital Shadows band. There's so many people in Digital Shadows that know musical instruments.
It's basically an orchestra right now.
It really is. All right, cool. That was a good question. That was a good one.
Great.
Thank you for coming all the way over
Fast
from
and
London
easy.
just for the question.
I just came just to bring that.
Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on Shadow Talk.
Pleasure. And next week you'll probably be back in London.
I will.
Hosting next week's
Yeah.
episode. Thank you, guests. Thank you, listeners. Talk to y'all next week.